Hi guys, welcome to day 4. I hope you're all well. Today's passages, let's kick straight in. In Genesis we see the flood that we were speaking about yesterday. Today it comes and it's a pretty hefty flood in that all of the mountains were covered by water. Imagine that. And every living thing and everyone died in that flood. Everybody was killed with the exception of Noah and his family and the animals that they took with them onto the ark. And so Noah's obedience, Noah's faith that we were speaking about yesterday, it paid off in the end. And Noah and the rest of the clan were on that boat for more than a year. The passage says they were there for a year and 10 days, which is a pretty long time to be shut up on a boat with the rest of your family and just a whole load of animals. I can imagine it being quite a difficult time. But they were there for over a year, and God didn't tell them to come out until the boat was rest and that all the water had gone and the ground was dry. But note that when Noah sent the birds out, the raven and the dove, and so he knew what was going on outside, and when Noah obviously would have felt the boat come to rest, he didn't then take himself out of the boat, open up the ark. In the same way that he had trusted God to lead him and his family into the ark, he didn't leave until God said to him, "Now you can go." And when they did leave the ark, when they got out, they would have had to start completely from scratch. You know, imagine coming out of a boat that you've been on for over a year and there being nothing or nobody else around. The whole world being empty and it's just you. And you have to start from scratch. But note, the first thing that Noah does, he doesn't go off and try and sort things out or build a house somewhere to stay, go and look for food for him or his family. The first thing he does is he builds an altar to God out of remembrance and worship and everything else. And then God promises that never again will he flood the earth. And he makes a covenant with Noah. He gives Noah everything. Check out verse 3 of chapter 9, where God just gives everything to Noah, that provision. Our Matthew passage, Matthew chapter 4, we see the temptation of Jesus by the devil. Now, temptation we'll remember from day 1 when Adam and Eve were tempted by the serpent, again the devil. And today in Matthew we see that even Jesus comes in for temptation. And yet, just like we were talking about on Monday, just because we're tempted, it doesn't mean that necessarily we're going to fail. And so Jesus, just because he's tempted, he doesn't fall. He's able to stand up to that temptation. How does he do it? He quotes scripture. Every time, you look in the chapter, every time that Satan tries to come at him with something, Jesus answers with scripture. He answers by quoting the truth of God. That just reminds me how important it is, how useful it is to be getting to know Scripture, reminding ourselves of verses in the Bible that we can use in times of trial. And so something like this, if you're here doing B365, reading the Bible each day, I think that's something really useful that will come out of it. Verses of Scripture are going to stick in our minds, that when hard times come, we'll be able to cling to those, remember the truth of God, and to use those verses to come back against temptation. Look at verses 2 and 3 and note that the devil came at the time when Jesus was vulnerable. He had been fasting for 40 days and so he was hungry, and so at that time the devil comes to him and tries to tempt him around the area of food. And also note that while he has been fasting, for Jesus it had been a time of prayer. And often when we've been through an important, or if you like, a spiritual time, we'll find that after that we find ourselves under attack. So maybe we need to be aware of the times where we're most likely to come in for temptation, when we're vulnerable, or when we've had a time where we're particularly, if you like, close with God, then we're going to come under attack. So let's be ready for those times. And Satan tested Jesus in different ways. Firstly, he tempted him with physical provision. Then he tempted, or he tested, if you like, his faith in God, saying, if if you trust God, throw yourself off the top of this temple and God will save you. And then after that, he put Jesus' view of power or earthly authority to the test by offering him all these earthly kingdoms and people's glory. Idolatry, if you like. And then later on in the chapter we see Jesus going out to call the disciples. And first of all, note that the people that he called were fishermen. They weren't important people, they weren't educated people. Fishermen was just a family trade. They're right down the bottom, if you like, near the bottom of the social ladder. And yet Jesus goes out and they're the people that he calls to follow him around, to be his disciples. And then when he calls them, what always sticks out to me is the way that it just says that at once they dropped their nets and followed him. Followed him into the unknown. They left their livelihoods, their business, their source of income, everything that they would have known. It says at once they dropped it when this guy Jesus comes along and says, follow me. Straight away they leave everything and they go with him. What obedience is that? And then finally our psalm. There's not really a lot to speak of recently in Proverbs. That might change soon. But our psalm today, just along the same line, says that God protects us and God delivers us. And if you look at verse 3 where it says, you are a shield around me, O Lord. And we see how God was a shield around Noah and his family. And then verse 8 where it talks about the Lord, from the Lord comes deliverance. And we see that in our passages today as well. Friends, let me encourage you, whatever else you take from today's passages, just to remember that God is a shield around us and that God is our deliverer. Whatever we're going through, whatever we face, we are able to overcome. Friends, enjoy your day and I'll see you again tomorrow. God bless.